Hi, welcome to the Leadership Standard. I am thrilled to introduce you to our guest today. They are Farah and Martin Perelmuter, the co-CEO and president of Speaker Spotlight, which is the premier speaking agency in Canada. They represent the who's who, from astronauts to Olympians to even me. And what I know about this company is they are the leader in their field. And they started from scratch about 30 years ago to become not just successful entrepreneurs. Ernst & Young named them Entrepreneurs of the Year twice. Without further ado, my interview with Farah and Martin Perelmuter. Farah and Martin, it's so good to see you, and thank you for being a guest today.
Thanks for having us, Jamie. Yeah, great to see you.
Great to see you. I'd love to start off by asking you both. Farah, let's start with you. What were you doing before you co-founded Speaker Spotlight? What was your job?
Well, I was about 24 at the time, so I didn't have much of a career before Speaker Spotlight, but I was working at a marketing company. So we specialize in the hospitality industry, and I did the PR for various locations. So I was there for a couple of years, and I was just bursting to do something on my own.
And Martin, what about you? Before Speaker Spotlight, what was your job?
So I had graduated from law school when I was 23, and I had articled and was hired back and working as an associate lawyer at a very prestigious law firm down on Bay Street in Toronto. And it looked great from the outside, but I was not happy doing that. Great place, great firm, but just not for me. And I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial with my career and sort of try to take control more of my future. So that's when we sort of took the entrepreneurial leap of faith around that time. In fact, it's kind of funny because we actually got married, we moved, we quit our jobs, and we started this business all within a couple of months of each other. So if you ever look at a list of most stressful things to do, change your relationship status, change your job, moving. Anyone who's had to move at any time in the recent future knows how stressful that can be. So we just got them all done at the same time, knocked them all off at once.
And that was nearly 30 years ago, long time ago.
30 years ago. So Farah, can you expand on that? Can you tell us more about the origin story of Speaker Spotlight? I think you started it in an apartment, in a room in your apartment.
Yes.
Can you take us back there and paint a picture? Because one thing that I want to hear more from you on is you are a master of visualization. I mean, in some ways you've brought to bear your entire path from Winnipeg to Toronto, but we're going to get there in a minute. Can we talk about what it was like in the early days of Speaker Spotlight?
Yes. And first of all, there's no way I could have envisioned what would happen. But let me take you back. Let me take you back nearly 30 years ago. And Martin and I were newly married. We were living in an apartment, and we happened to have an extra little tiny room in our space. And so we started Speaker Spotlight, and we shared a phone. And I was just telling someone a story about using this phone, and it had a long cord attached to it, and we would walk around listen to the phone. And then I told my friend, I think we may have to explain to the younger generation what that's like what the actual landline is like. But we had this phone that we shared. We also had a fax machine, and so we used that as a phone as well, because sometimes we both had to be on the phone. But we were at our apartment in this little tiny room with this one phone with the long cord and the fax machine. And I remember that I had a little cabinet with 2 drawers. And in those drawers, I had the files of my clients. And I remember thinking one day, both these drawers will be full of clients. That was sort of my goal back then. Eventually, one day I was walking through our office, and I walked into our filing room. And in the room, it was just thousands of files in huge cabinets. And I remember thinking, I just can't believe how far we've come. But originally, it all started in that little tiny room.
Wow. And Martin, is there anything you can add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it was, you talked about sort of bootstrapping a business and starting from the beginning. So neither of us had any background in this industry, the events industry or the speaking industry. So, and when we started the business, we didn't have any clients, we didn't have any speakers, we didn't have any industry contacts or experience whatsoever. In fact, we didn't have any business experience really of any kind. So we were really starting from sort of ground zero. But that beginner's mind, I think, is a real advantage. And we were young and naive, which is kind of a nice way of saying young and stupid. And we thought we could, how hard could it be? We'll start a business together. But because we didn't have any preconceived ideas or notions of how to start a business, how to run a business, how to build a speakers agency, we tried a lot of different things. Some worked, some failed miserably, but we started to figure out what was working and sort of do more of that and started to pick up a little bit of traction. But it was definitely not easy at the beginning because we really didn't know what we were doing, to be completely honest.
And as Martin mentioned, we would try all these different ideas. So, the creativity was flowing and we kept trying new things because, as he mentioned, like we didn't know what other people did or what we were supposed to do. So we became known as the most innovative speakers bureau, but it's just because we didn't know what we were doing and we happened to have a few good ideas.
I think we were sort of self-anointed most innovative because there was at least one or two agencies in the country that said they were the oldest. One of them had to be lying. There's at least one or two said they were the biggest. So we're like, well, we're certainly not the oldest. We certainly weren't the biggest. So we were like, what can we be? Oh, we can be the most innovative, and that was a huge advantage for us. Just kind of trying things that were just sort of in some cases out of left field, but sort of an unconventional approach to a business these companies like ours existed for a while. So it wasn't like we invented this space or this idea, but just tried to do a little bit differently.
What was it about the? Sorry, go ahead, Farah.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think we really kept that entrepreneurial spirit alive and we continue to try new things and we continue to innovate. And that's what makes business so much fun. So some ideas are great, some aren't, but we keep them rolling.
How do you create the conditions for innovation in a business? Because Speaker Spotlight continues to evolve. How do you do that in the present day where you keep that same spirit and create those conditions with your team?
To me, I think it just begins with curiosity, right? If you're curious, if you're just constantly looking and searching for new and better ways to do things, ideas that you can try, then I think it starts with that. And then obviously it's all about people. And so, over the years, we've now got a team of 35 people. And which, by the way, when we started, if you had asked us, we would have said best case scenario, maybe one day we'll have like 2 or 3 people working with us and we'll get this thing out of the apartment. There was no plan to grow a business. It was just kind of organic. And we're still a small business, by most standards. But, we've definitely, I think been able to attract people who have that curiosity, that desire to just keep evolving and improving. And I think that's such a key part of it.
We know that we don't have all the answers. So we love hearing from our team. So they're all experts in various things in relation to our business. And we value their ideas, their input, their feedback. Also, we work with the most unbelievable people on this planet, the smartest and most inspiring. And so we are constantly learning from them. We're incredibly lucky and grateful.
I once heard that great leadership is asking the right questions, yet you don't have to have all the right answers. You have a team of people you can call upon and you move in the direction of those questions. So I see the both of you as the type of leaders who ask the right questions and you surround yourself with the right people to help execute.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's, at the beginning, the ideas had to come from us because we really didn't have many people to ask. But the truth is that, we're really fortunate. Half of our team has been with us for 10 or more years. So we've got people who've been with us 10, 15, 20 plus years, which is amazing. But often the best ideas are going to come with the person who just joined the company a year or two ago and has a completely different perspective because, we're pretty far into the forest at this point. So just, the ideas come from everywhere, as Farah said. and particularly interested in hearing from younger people and people newer to the team who just have a different set of eyes that they look at things with.
What are the differences in the approaches you've seen with our generation, because we're in a similar generation, and the newer generations that are coming up, people in their, in their early to mid 20s or even late 20s, early 30s?
That's a great question. Farah, do you want to take that one or?
The new approaches in regards to innovation or to doing their job.
Yeah, I would say how they approach work.
Well, we're very fortunate that our entire team is extraordinarily motivated and productive. So with us, we have an office, well, two offices, and we don't mandate having all the employees there every day. Everyone can work from wherever they want to work. And we know that everyone's working hard, everyone's productive. I guess with some of the newer employees, they do have some more knowledge when it comes to technology. And, it's something that we're very interested in, and we're adopting more and more technology. But I think perhaps the newer, uh, you know, the younger group of employees are more ready to grasp that and to explore. What do you think, Martin?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of talk about, this new cohort coming into the workplace, and lots of people have negative things to say, like, oh, they don't have the work ethic that we did when we came in, or, I totally disagree with that. I find that, values is a huge thing. And I think one of the things when we're hiring is alignment of values is really important to us. We all know that cultural fit is probably the most important thing. We're not performing brain surgery. So while technical skills are important in what we do, and certainly someone doing an accounting role or logistics role needs different skills than someone in marketing or in sales, at the end of the day, we can train for most of what people are doing. It's not, again, it's not brain surgery or rocket science. We've got an important role to fill, but the cultural fit is so important, and so values really matter. And I find that a lot of our employees, I'd say, even the younger ones, have kind of old school values in some ways, which I think are embedded into them probably through their parents or just their upbringing. But I think that the difference that I see is just a sense of sort of self-awareness for one thing. I find that a lot, I don't know, when I went into my first job when I was 22, 23, I didn't really know myself that well and didn't really know what made me tick and things I needed to learn. I feel like now a lot of young people are coming in, they kind of know exactly what they want to do, and they have a pretty strong sense of self. And maybe it's just because they were raised in this era of like everything they could, want to know, they can find out on the internet. They have pretty broad knowledge of different things. So a lot of confidence, I'd say, that a lot of them bring in. But, I don't think they're that much different really than again, we're a little older than you, JB, but our, when we all sort of went into the workforce, I think, but I think there's higher expectations. I think for a lot of us, we were just like happy to have a job, and it's like whatever our boss wanted us to do, we would do. I think now there's more expectations that young employees have of the companies that they work for and the organizations they work for, that they're doing the right things, that they're ethical, that they have, that they're purpose driven, those kinds of things. I think when we started in the workforce, I was not thinking about those things. I was just thinking, get a job, get a paycheck, work hard, sort of pay my dues. So I think that that's probably a big difference.
You mentioned values, and one value, if I could call it this, with you individually, Farah and Martin, and as a couple, and it's one thing I even told my wife about, is you took a remote work adventure trip to Colombia and Costa Rica not too long ago. I believe it was 2023. And I told Karen, my wife, I said, we've been talking about doing something like this for years. And look at Farah and Martin. They went off and they did it. And you had this extraordinary story where on Facebook, I usually just flip through and, oh, that's nice. But this was one that stuck with me. Can you talk about your value as a working couple, life partners and business partners, of what your observations were on taking a remote work adventure together?
Well, the thing I'll say is, as Farah mentioned, so during the pandemic, we found that we were all in the office right before. years ago, 10 years ago, Farah wanted me to work from home once a week. And so I tried it, and I think it lasted 3 weeks. And then I'm like, I can't do this. I need to work in an office. But of course, we all got thrust into this kind of work from home thing 5 years ago. And anyway, so we have a work from anywhere policy. And so some people come into the office, some people never do. And we had a couple of employees, one who had an opportunity to live in London for a month, and then in Copenhagen, and asked if that was okay. We're like, absolutely. Like, as long as you're working, you're getting your job done, no problem. So we were fortunate, Jamie, because both our kids were away. So our daughter was backpacking through Australia and Southeast Asia after she graduated from university. Our son was in university in England, and the two of us are at home. And we're like, if we're ever going to do this, now is the time, because, it's the middle of winter. What are we doing here? Our kids are having these great adventures. So we decided to go to Colombia and then Costa Rica it was just for a month. But we rented an Airbnb in Bogota. We were working from there, and it was just amazing. Like, I just loved like getting up in the morning, going for a walk, and seeing a city of 10, 11 million people. Streets were packed at 7:30 in the morning. People are going to work, blue collar and white collar workers. There's no 9 to 5 in Bogota. People start work at 7:30 in the morning and work straight through to 6 or 7 o'clock at night. I think sometimes in North America, maybe there's this idea that like, oh, things are like way more chilled, laid back, in maybe in South America. Amazing work ethic of the people in Bogota that we met, and just such a cool experience. So that was amazing. Were you thinking the thing I posted on Facebook? I think was I had a meeting with one of my favorite authors.
Yeah, Juan Gabriel Vasquez.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
So do you want me? I don't know if I can tell you the story if you want, or
yeah,
relevant to our visit. But
I actually bought the book after I saw it.
Yeah. The long story short is Juan Gabriel Vasquez is one of my favorite authors, and we have friends that live in Bogota, and we were at their apartment and we were chatting and mentioned that, he's one of my favorite authors. He's a Colombian author. I've read most of his books. In fact, I have one of his books with me, and their face sort of changed. And I'm like, did I say something wrong? And, I thought maybe he's been like canceled or something in Colombia. I didn't know. And they're like, no, he's actually a very good friend of ours. He was just here for dinner 3 nights ago in our house, in our apartment, and he lives right up the street. And so they texted him, and a day or two later, Farah and I went up there. We met with him. He signed my book. He gave me a copy of one of his other books that I hadn't read, and we had a weird, random chance meeting with Juan Gabriel Vasquez, which for like a book lover like me was like such a cool, like just unbelievable. Like we don't get starstruck very often because we get to work with a lot of, pretty famous people, I guess. But I was a little bit starstruck meeting him.
Being able to work remotely just makes it a whole new world. Lots of possibilities.
Yeah, and on that note, I actually a quote by Juan Gabriel Vasquez is, "There's no disastrous, I can't read my handwriting here, mania. No more dangerous whim than a speculation of roads not taken." And as a couple, you strike me as you're not people who, avoid the road not taken. You actually lean into the road not taken, because you also took a trip to to Thailand when you were much younger too. Is that right? Yeah.
We did. We backpacked through Thailand, Indonesia. Was there another one?
Malaysia.
Oh,
we just passed through Malaysia between Indonesia and Thailand.
Yeah. For me, it changed my life. That's when I realized I want to go ahead and start Speaker Spotlight. It was an idea that I had, but once we were traveling and we were with the local people there the whole time, like no running water for 7 weeks, and they just seemed so happy, and they didn't really have a lot of material possessions. And so I remember thinking, I think I do want to just start a cute little business that would keep me happy. And then it grew.
Yeah, I think sometimes with that distance, right? Sometimes with that distance, our best ideas come. Because I lived in Malaysia for, I don't know if you know, for a year, and I was a professor there in 2006. And when I saw that post, you wrote, so what are your, has anyone here traveled to North, to that part of the world, to Southeast Asia? And one thing I did was, if that movie, The Motorcycle Diaries, with Che Guevara, right? So he wanted to get things for free. He wanted to like move easily throughout where he was, throughout wherever he was, Central America at the time, I forget. So he got himself in the newspaper. So I did the same thing. I actually got myself in the newspaper in Cambodia. A Canadian, I reached out before really the internet, I mean early internet, to Michelle Vachon, who was a Canadian living in Cambodia, and said, I have a short film that's premiering at the Cambodian Film Festival. It's an interesting story about how I got here. It's about a Rwandan genocide survivor on the 30th anniversary of the killing fields. Do you want to feature me? She said, yes. So we met at a library. Her deadline was the next day, so she got out this paper on the front page of the Cambodian Daily, and everybody seemed to recognize me, even if English was their second language, because I walked around with the newspaper. So I got everything for free. The hotel, upgraded me, free meals. And so I love I love the images of you and Martin. Martin with hair then, by the way.
Yeah.
Early Martin.
That's right. The amazing thing was that again, that trip we took was over 30 years ago, but we ended off in northern Thailand. We had gone up to Chiang Rai, and then we took a truck to a river, and then got on a river boat and went for, I don't know, 3-4 hours up a river into the middle of nowhere in the forest, and then got up that, and then rode on the back of an elephant for I don't know how long, and then hiked for a few hours. Not on our own. We had a guide with us, although the guide got lost a few times. But we ended up in this little village in northern Thailand, and as Farah said, no running water, no electricity, obviously, and we spent a number of days sort of hiking among these different little villages,
Tribal villages.
Yeah, tribal villages, hill tribes, and the thing that we took away from it, we weren't there looking for some big lesson. Like, it wasn't like we were searching for something, but everyone we met there was happy. Like, everybody was at peace. Like, family was the center of everything. And we just stayed in people's huts, right? And they fed us, and we talked. Like, it was an incredible experience. But so when we were heading back home, this was the end of our trip, we were saying, it's so interesting. Like, everyone we know back home, we have so many things here. People have, everything they could possibly want, every gadget, they got cars, homes, they can go on trips, and a lot of people just seem really stressed out and miserable. And everybody there that we met seemed just happy and at peace. But the difference was, like, they don't have a choice. Like, they can't just get up and leave. They are sort of stuck where they want, although I think they were very happy, and I don't think they wanted to go anywhere. And we said to each other, like, we have a choice. Like, we're going home now, that we're leaving this sort of paradise behind, and now we're going back to the real world. And we can choose. We don't have to be stressed out and miserable. We can take control of our lives and choose happiness and be happy. So we learned a lot up from that trip. I always say that travel is the best education. And I mentioned our daughter went backpacking after university. It was terrifying for us as parents to see our little daughter. We dropped her off at the airport. Her backpack, I think, weighed almost as much as her. And she went, solo backpacking. So she got on a plane, and we didn't see her for 9 months. And but it changed her life too, I think. And she's a stronger and better person as a result. So I just believe that you travel, you get different perspectives. It's such a great way to learn.
Yeah, that was really brave. I have a daughter who's now 11, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, in a few years to let her go. But I like that you modeled it for your kids, because your son is also in England, and he's becoming an accomplished musician, and you've encouraged him as well. And so I love that the role model component of your life as well for your kids. Now, one thing you mentioned was you talked about happiness and how people overseas exuded that even with very little material possessions. I'm making a little bit of a stretch here, but what I have found in the research is that people who have purpose have a higher sense of happiness. They have, in terms of, if we move this to work for a moment, the companies have higher workforce retention, higher levels of innovation, and overall, people are more excited to come into work, which is, again, the vibe I get from Speaker Spotlight. Why, after 30 years, do you both do what you do?
Well, I can start. I think for me, since the very first day, even before the first day when I would dream about doing this business, it's all about the impact and it's about really helping people. So I think all of the whole team recognizes that we are a part of this impact. So our speakers go out, and as you mentioned, we work with so many different types of speakers. So Olympians, astronauts, business leaders, on and on and on. And they speak in front of so many different audiences. But the constant is that they are creating impact and they are changing lives. And we get um, emails from audience members and the event organizers, and they tell us how the audience responded and what they got out of it and the changes that they're making. And for me, when I go see a speaker, I so often watch the audience. And it's like I see um, eyes light up and I see nodding and I see notes. And it's that impact that keeps it so special and it's never gone away.
Yeah.
Martin?
So yeah, I think it's a great question because often you hear, the question is like, what keeps CEOs up at night, right? That's like the big, but I think the better question, the more important question is what gets them out of bed in the morning, and which is what you asked. And it's very similar with me. I mean, there's a great feeling you get when you know that you've matched the right speaker with the right audience, and you just know in your heart that like this is going to work, and that's kind of when the magic happens. And I'm not so naive or Pollyannish to think that someone's going to get in front of a group and change everybody's life in an hour. That doesn't happen, but they can plant a few seeds that then people in that audience can take and run with and make changes, whether it's to their work life, to their business or the companies that they run or they work with, to their personal life, maybe at home, maybe they become a better parent or a better spouse, or in their community, maybe they get involved in something that they get more active in within their community. And we've seen it happen in our own lives, to us, and we've seen it happen in the lives of so many clients that we work with. Like Farah said, we sometimes get emails and we hear about a change that happened, and the spark of that change was seeing someone at a talk that planted that seed. So that's to me, like, knowing that what we do can actually make a difference, is a pretty cool thing, and a privilege to get to do that.
Mm. And on that idea of change, how has the speaking business changed? Maybe not over 30 years because that's a big gap, but over the last 7 or 8 years, what changes have you seen,
Yeah.
Farah?
Well, there's always new trends in what our clients are asking for. So the topics themselves have changed over all the years. So that's one big change. Another change is just in regards to technology. When we started, I remember going to the reference library trying to find information. I remember the day someone had us go over to his apartment and he said, I'm going to sound so ancient, but he said, look at this thing called the internet. And, so just the way business is works has changed so much. And with speaking, the topics have changed a lot. Through COVID, there was this huge increase in virtual talks. So that was a big change. And what do you think, Martin? What comes to mind?
Yeah, I think there's been more change in the last 5 or 6 years than there was in the first 25 years of us being in this business. So things definitely change and evolve, but in particular the last 5 or 6 years, and COVID was kind of the impetus for some of that change. But the biggest changes, I'd say, number one is, and I think this is what I would call the TED factor. So everyone's familiar with TED Talks. So up until TED became sort of popular, most people, most professional people might go to 1 or 2 conferences a year. And so they might see a handful of speakers and that was it. And so, unless they were like on the committee of like deciding who to hire speakers, they wouldn't watch videos of speakers, right? That was just not something people did. But with TED, it became something that people do all the time. And so I think audiences' BS detectors has gone up significantly because I think people now know the difference between a really good talk where somebody really has deep knowledge of the subject and strong convictions compared to someone who maybe read a couple books on a subject, memorized the talk. Maybe they're a good performer, so they can kind of get up and put on a good performance, but they don't really have that deep knowledge. And I think that's the biggest difference is that audiences are more sophisticated, and as a result, the types of speakers that tend to do best, I think, are the ones that really have deep knowledge and original ideas, and that's a great thing. It's a real positive. The other thing is, positive changes in society. So, in 2019, I was asked to go speak at an event. It was like a speaker boot camp. It was down in the U.S. And they asked, I was on a panel, and they asked us, what are the trends in the industry? And I said, well, I think that it's never been a better time to be a woman or a person of color who's a speaker. Because for a long time in our business, most of the speakers that were put on stages were people that look kind of like you or me, Jamie, a lot of middle-aged white guys, and the speakers often didn't reflect who the audiences were. And we've seen a big shift in the last 5 or 6 years in particular, I'd say. And it was interesting. So one of the people by the way, most of the people in the audience were American men, middle-aged, white, did not like what I was saying. And so one guy actually sort of yelled out from the front, like he was sitting, I think, in the front row, so should I just throw in the towel? Because I was saying, it's good. And I said, no, it just means you don't get 90% of the gigs anymore. Maybe you're only going to get 40% of them, which means you need to be better, which presumably is why you're here. So it's a good thing. But I think that these people you see on stages look very different from when we first started, for sure. And even from 5 or 6 years ago, there's a noticeable difference. And it just creates a richer learning experience, I believe. So it's a really positive change, I think, that's in society in general, and it's reflected in the work that we do as well.
Yeah, and definitely when I look at the Speaker Spotlight roster, what you said, your actions match your words, right? Like, I mean, you see that diversity within the roster.
Yeah. I remember for most of our career in the speaking industry, it was such a struggle to find women speakers. We always wanted to include a woman amongst the lineup of men, and it was always such a struggle. And now it's so refreshing to see so many accomplished women speakers, and of course, many speakers representing different types of backgrounds. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Just yesterday on LinkedIn, one of our speakers, Jamie, I think you may know him, Kendall Netmaker, who is an Indigenous speaker from Saskatchewan, was in an airport, and he ran into one of our other speakers, Jordan Tutu, who used to play in the NHL and is and they took a picture with each other. They gave each other's books. They sort of swapped books, and it just put the biggest smile on my face to see these two amazing people. They're on their way to or from an event that we had booked for them, and knowing that the impact that they're making on the audiences they speak to. And there were very few Indigenous speakers up until who were speaking at non-Indigenous conferences. Right? It was like, oh, okay, we're gonna. Now it's like, it's not just speaking on reconciliation, and although that's part of it, it's just people who have different perspectives speaking. Kendall speaks on leadership and motivation, and like his experiences are incredible to hear. And you learn something about, a really important part of the culture in Canada that most of us didn't learn in school growing up. So, that's such an amazing opportunity for us to help, not just inspire, but educate, through the speakers that we work with. And again, that's another thing that, makes getting up every morning and doing this worthwhile.
You mentioned, Farah mentioned the themes or trends. Trends was the word as part of the change. On that note, with maybe Indigenous, although not necessarily Indigenous themes, although that could be part of it, what are some of the trends you're seeing as we move into 2025? And the second part of the question is, do you think that the trends you're seeing are reflective or indicative of entrepreneurial trends and needs within the greater culture and society within Canada, in Canadian business?
We kind of get a bird's eye view. Like, we're lucky because we work in virtually every industry, as well as, not just the private sector, but also the public sector. So the kinds of requests and things that our clients are asking for, I think, are very indicative of what organizations and businesses are dealing with. Right now, it seems like, you can't have a conference without talking about AI. But it's definitely not just like the flavor of the month or a good conference theme. It's changing the way, most of us run our businesses or are thinking about the future. So that's definitely, a huge thing right now around AI. But, there's also the things that just never go away, leadership, communication, building trust, building strong relationships, culture. Those are things that just are always, popular topics. There's a great financial writer, Morgan Housel, who wrote a book called The Psychology of Money. And his most recent book, I think it's called Same as It Ever Was, I believe is the title book. And his whole thesis is that, yes, the world is changing rapidly and there's technological changes and geopolitical shifts and all of these things happening. But the one thing that doesn't really change is human psychology. And so while, yes, there's lots of changes, there's also a lot of things don't change. And so what are the things that to be true that will be true 5 or 10 or 20 years from now? Because we can't predict exactly what AI is going to do in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. We don't know what's going to happen in Russia, in the Middle East, in China, and there's lots of things we can't predict. But the one thing you can predict with fairly good certainty is that people will behave in a certain way because basic psychology hasn't changed. You can go back hundreds of years, and the same things that drove people in the 16th or 17th century are the same things that motivate and sort of influence their behavior today. So that's, there's lots of changes, and then there's those things that remain constant.
And I was just going to mention that one topic that has emerged in recent years and continues on is around mental health. And so I'm so proud, we're so proud that we represent incredible speakers who can talk about that. So mental health is a big one. And another one that has always been around and I think always will is great speakers with great stories. So speakers who have extraordinary stories to share and the lessons learned through what they've gone through. So those are the inspirational, motivational speakers with important takeaways.
Well, Farah, you and Martin have an extraordinary story in how you started your business and how you are a model for entrepreneurs across the country and how you've grown your business over the last 30 years. And I would just like to end with asking if a CEO or a key executive who is running an offsite or a conference or association event, and they're looking to hire the perfectly aligned speaker for their event, how would they find you and what would be the next step?
Well, our website is speakers.ca. It's easy. You can also find the business and a number of us individually on LinkedIn and Instagram, all social media. And Martin when we have a request form on our site that you can fill out or just send an email to info@speakers.ca. And Martin, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, the website's probably the best place to start. You can search speakers by topic, by their fees, but ultimately the best thing to do is, take a look on the website and then just reach out. We have an amazing team and the website's a resource, but really it's all about the fit. And so, our goal is to obviously, help our clients find the right, it's not the question who's the best speaker, it's who's the best speaker for your event, given who your audience is, what your objectives are. And this is what we love doing. So yeah, we'd love to hear from anyone who may need anything.
Please reach out.
Farah, Martin, it's been an honor. I really appreciate your time, your insights, and your stories.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this was fun and always great to chat with you. And hope to see you in person one of these days soon.
Yes, absolutely. So this is a leadership standard. If you haven't subscribed, please do so we can reach more leaders with some of Canada's top entrepreneurs and business leaders. Thank you. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Leadership Standard Podcast, brought to you by Tech Canada. Tech Canada's proven process of peer advisory groups, one-to-one executive coaching, thought leadership from subject matter experts, and national and global networks all provide a lasting impact, not just on your business, but on your life. Your ability to deal with fast-paced change will accelerate. Your decision-making will become more decisive. You'll be a better leader. Learn more at tec-canada.com. Keep leading with excellence and see you next time on the Leadership